Hello and welcome to the OfCast. I'm your host, Elsie Eigerman.
And I'm your host, Max Mariner.
And today we have a very special episode. Instead of talking about the actual novel, we're going to be talking about the graphic novel edition. And we have two special guests joining us to talk about the graphic novel.
Very special guests.
Yes, very special guests. We have Patrick H. Willems, my former boss, and host of the Patrick H. Willems YouTube channel.
Hello, guys. Pleasure to be here.
And we also have Scott Niswander, my former boss and host of the NerdSync YouTube channel.
Hello, that's my name. That's me.
All right. So, for listeners at home who don't want to be spoiled, we're just going to talk about the chapters we've covered so far for the podcast, the beginning bit here. And then Max, as someone who could be spoiled by further discussions of this book, will then leave, and that will be your cue to leave if you don't want to be spoiled. But if you don't care, stick around for the whole thing. It's a good time.
Yeah. I do want to ask, do we know, it's kind of amazing that while we were recording this podcast, this graphic novel, The Handmaid's Tale, just came out? That's just,
I think it's part of the, renewed interest, what with the television show, is probably similar to the thing where they're like, we're going to come out with a sequel in September.
That's right, yeah.
Well, I would imagine it's because of the popularity of this podcast that they were like, we need a graphic novel.
They rushed into production immediately as soon as it was launched.
So honestly, thank you guys. Really.
Yeah, truly.
Well, I mean, we are the only Handmaid's Tale novel podcast, so...
Yeah, well, when she told me that, I was visibly shocked. I was like, there's no way. This is The Handmaid's Tale. This is, high school reading material. Everybody knows this book.
But
there's
how
no
many
way
Handmaid's Tale TV show podcasts are there?
There are like
6.
8.
Okay.
8, yeah. Yeah.
But so you're special.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The only novel one.
Unfortunately, it meant that all the really great names for a Handmaid's Tale podcast, like Mayday, the Red Center, all the good ones have been taken. So
Whoa,
we're the OfCast.
Does Max know what Mayday means?
No.
Oh, I don't. I thought you meant Maid Day or something like that.
No.
Oh.
Hey, you'll find out in a month.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the record, thank you, Elsie, as I came up with Handmaid with the OfCast, for the record.
It's a great title.
All the great names were taken, so we settled on OfCast.
It is actually a good one.
Yeah, I love it.
I wanted to start off a discussion with a question for our guests. You guys, Scott and Patrick, you guys are both well-versed in the comic medium, which is one of the reasons why we wanted you on. How often do you find comics or graphic novels of any kind open with a 2-page spread? It's the first page.
Scott, do you want to take this first?
Sure. I mean, I guess it depends on, I don't know, I feel like a lot of comics, I feel like it happens quite frequently, just because you want a big splash page to really grab a reader's attention and kind of show where you are, where what's happening. It's kind of an exciting. It's a part of the the art form to just open big and exciting. And I don't know. I feel like it's fairly common.
Yeah, I will say, to get real nerdy about serialized single issue comics, usually the way they go is you open the cover and then the inside cover is an ad.
Yep.
And then there's only one single page to open with. And so because of that, a lot of single issue comics, they might open with a single page splash page, but not a double splash page. But because this is a graphic novel that doesn't have to worry about ads and stuff like that, and has a just sort of a title page, and then the first actual pages of artwork. I think it's more common in sort of standalone graphic novels than serialized single issues.
Interesting. I just through the graphic novels that I've read, usually, at least in my experience, they don't start with spreads. They usually start with just single panel and then go on, and then it's not usually the turning point of Act 1 where you get some kind of full page spread, Blankets, for example, is a graphic novel I've read that does that. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of get it'll start out kind of with like a little slow rising action, and then a couple pages in, it'll be like, boom, there's your double page.
Yeah, that thing. So the fact that it starts out with such like bleak imagery, like a full page like that, it's striking. It's striking.
And I feel like the novel in general sort of plays it fast and loose with panels. There's a lot of pages where there's sort of overlapping images over the panels and whatnot.
Elsie, as our resident like Handmaid's Tale fan, when you first opened this book, like, did it look like what you always thought the Handmaid's Tale looked like? Like, did the interpretation like resonate with you at all?
I think that the color scheme and things of that sort made a lot of sense, but I think that the take on the first chapter, it got rid of like most of the images I really like. So for example, we don't hear about how the gymnasium used to have these girls with these felt skirts in this adaptation. And in fact, the gymnasium only vaguely looks like a gymnasium. I mean, at least it's better than the television program where it doesn't look like a gymnasium at all. But
actually, this is a major question I have, because just to, to give some background, I have not read the novel, The Handmaid's Tale. I have not watched any of the TV show, and so I am probably one of the very few people whose introduction to this entire story is this graphic novel that just
you might be the only person.
No, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, same here. I've never read the book, never seen the show. This is my very first time diving into this story.
Yeah, so Elsie, I'm really counting on you to, and I mean, like, and
That's
Max
what I'm
for the first 3 chapters.
Yeah.
But just to fill in, like, what changed in this adaptation.
Yeah, well, so, for example, in the book, we get a description of the basketball hoops, and it's, like, very clearly, it still looks like a gymnasium, whereas here we get the lines on the floor the way a gymnasium does, but there's the painting of the eye on the side, and it's sort of big and fading, and it doesn't have the sort of the firm straight lines of the novel. Because, like, for example, there's a whole description of, what is it called? Like the type of running track on the second level of a gymnasium that looks down on the gymnasium.
Yeah.
It's like a promenade? I don't know.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And sort of
Do you think much was lost without going into all the detail of the gymnasium in particular?
Well, kind of. I mean, it's what I like the best about the 3-page chapter that is the, like, introduction. It's sort of like, this is hitting the broad strokes of what happens. Like, we get the description of the gymnasium and the description of the men outside, but we don't get the line where she says about the men outside, like, our fantasy was to go to them and convince them to let us out. We still had our bodies. Which, like, I think you lose something if you don't have that line.
Right. Actually, another question I had, I'm going to have a lot of questions, so apologies in advance. But how much of the text and the dialogue is straight from the original novel?
I'd say 100%. This seems like a word for word.
Okay. And just really probably with, like, lines removed?
Yes. There's, like, huge chunks of text that's missing, but I think that the words are exactly the same. The lines are being pulled.
Okay.
I have to wonder what this thing would look like if they included all of it. Like,
yeah, and it's such a image-heavy book, and you do lose something that, like, we get the picture of the army blankets, and they say U.S. on them, but we don't get the line, old ones that still said U.S., which is such a great line. In fact, I think it was Max's favorite line of the first chapter.
Yes. Because it just instinctively and inherently creates a world that is unfamiliar to us, but still creates a bridge that we can, like, connect to.
Also, I'm just realizing this now, but they don't have cattle prods on their belts. They have riding crops.
Yeah, that seemed a little funny to me.
Because they say that they're cattle prods, but that's
Right.
clearly a riding crop.
And then there is a close-up of the riding crop.
Yeah. It's a little
So
weird.
the question is, does what's her name? Renee, how do you pronounce her last name?
I have not looked that up.
Because I believe she's, French Canadian.
Renault?
No?
Yes, she's a Canadian artist known for her vivid and dreamlike illustrations in watercolor and ink.
Yeah, but so the question is, does she not know what a cattle prod is?
I mean, there's a
Good
chance.
question.
I can see where you could come to the conclusion that a riding crop is a cattle prod, but a cattle prod is a lot like more scary than a riding crop.
Yeah.
I think
Related
so.
question: what is a riding crop?
So a riding crop is what you use to like beat a horse to make the horse go faster.
Oh, it's that like it's like that. Yeah. Okay, I've seen it.
The little,
it's
like,
like
kind of leather whip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a stick with a little piece of leather that's sort of doubled over to.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's
Are we-
exactly what is in that illustration.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's
no.
like that's clearly a
Yes.
riding crop, but like a cattle prod is an electrical thing that shocks people. Yeah, it's a little weird.
That is interesting. Good catch. I honestly did not pick that up.
It's just funny because, clearly lines from the original novel were chosen to, some were dropped, some were included, and she kept this line and then drew the wrong thing. Yeah, I mean, again, like, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's like, it's a single illustration. It's just an odd choice.
In that in a similar vein, Elsie. Now,
Yes.
I maybe show my hand a bit because even though I've read like the first, I think we're like 6 or
7 chapters in.
Yeah, we're 7 chapters in. I am a bit. I'm seeing some of these images and I'm trying to remember if they are accurate to the book. For example, when Alfred goes to speak to the two women in, I think it was chapter 2, are they both wearing green?
Yes, Martha's wear green like surgeons used to wear.
Okay, yeah. Oh boy.
And the television adaptation makes it a sort of darker green that looks sort of almost grayish, sort of like a tan hemp color, but it's supposed to be green.
Cause and then Serena Joy, she wore blue.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Mine's
So I guess
blue.
this is really weird because I was thinking about how great, like, very much sort of like how the world of the Handmaid's Tale was very gray, except for the Handmaid's Tale, so they would, like, except for the characters who are in
Yeah.
red usually to stand out. But I guess I'm just like, I'm totally missing the other colors here because they're very color coded, like
Yes.
Yes.
red,
absolutely.
blue, and green. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think the comic does especially on some of these opening pages, does a really
yeah.
good job of painting the different worlds of these different characters with the colors that represent them, which is really interesting to me.
yeah, especially Serena Joy. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
And it's one of the things I love most about the book is that it really does focus on the colors. I mean, you get a sort of paragraph where she's just talking about the umbrellas and how the umbrellas are different colors for each different woman who lives in the house. And the television adaptation has really terrible color grading, and everything is dark and gray.
Aw.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
It kind of feels
Not
like
a
you're
fan of the visual style of the show.
Not a big fan of the visual style of the show, no.
I have not watched it, but so I can't really say anything. I know a lot of people that really like it.
There are like occasional shots that I'm just like, oh my god, that's beautiful. But usually it's ones like, there's like a shot in a grocery store that I think is amazing where there's like a pile of oranges and they're reaching out and grabbing the oranges. But since it's in a grocery store, it's high lighting, so it's not dark and gray like everything else.
yeah.
There are a
I
bunch
will
of
watch it one of these days.
really beautiful shots. It's just like the lighting and coloring is just slightly off. For a while I thought I hated the costuming, and then I saw pictures of the costuming outside and I was like, oh no, it's just lighting and coloring.
I have to ask, like, in that same vein, Elsie, how do you feel about how this art portrays the Handmaid's Tale overall? Like
I like it. I really like what they did with the hoods. Because you could easily take it and make it sort of look very Islamic, and I'm glad that was not the tack taken, that it looks sort of almost surgical in a way, which I think is more in keeping with what the book describes.
I recall when you brought up the fact that, like, the Handmaid's Tale's, like, Margaret Atwood's kind of wondering, like, what if Iran happened in the U.S.? Like, that's
Yes.
sort of like, yeah. So I guess that sort of harkens to that, like, idea, in a sense.
Yeah. And like, I mean, you definitely see stuff in the book, like, there's a Martha who gets shot because the guards think that the Martha's really just a man in women's clothing or something like that. So you
Yeah.
have to have a certain level of like very covered up.
Yeah, this episode is an endless sequence of, you're an expert, what do you think about this?
That said, I don't like how anime-y some of the eyes are.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Like, I think when she meets Serena Joy for the first time, there's like a close-up of Serena Joy's face, and I'm like, this is a little too weird.
That's a really striking image to me too. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Where she's got like the, what is it? I know what you're talking about though.
She has a cigarette, and she's being like, I expect to see as little as possible of you.
Yeah, that one, like, it really was like, wow. That's, first off, that's blue. Secondly, like, that is like, this. It's a very, I wouldn't say it's like more defined in the other pictures, but I definitely see what you're talking about.
I really like that panel, just in particular how she blends into the pattern of the wallpaper.
Oh yeah, I love that part.
And the same shade of blue, and also I just really like the line art on the smoke coming from the cigarette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like how it's actually going outside of the panel.
It's
That's
drifting
cool.
off the page. Yeah, I like that.
I like how there doesn't seem to be much like artistic restriction with how, with the nature of graphic novel. It just seems to be do whatever is best to for the image.
I just love the fact that the settings keep fading.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of cool stuff with that.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I have many things to say later on when we go deeper into this book.
Although I think one of the better pieces of adaptation where she doesn't use words but she sort of translates the words is the scene we get of the two handmaids walking down the street. You can really see what Atwood means when she describes it as like she walks down the street doubled.
Right.
Of, like these two almost sort of clones walking down this like big empty street.
That does slightly get into like one minor issue I have with the artwork, which is just that it's hard to tell some of the handmaids apart just by their faces.
Mm-hmm.
And so where I'm like, I can't really tell the difference between of Fred and of Glenn.
Yeah.
You have to wonder if that was maybe like partially intentional to like show how like these all handmaids are in like the exact same occupation, but there's a line. There is of course a line. That,
Yeah. Similarly, like I had that same issue where I'm like, who is saying what to who currently?
Right.
Yeah.
Like looking for little clues in the dialogue, and it's like, I don't think that is entirely intentional because we should know who the character is, and that really just comes down to like the drawing of faces, and it's one of those things that with comics you do get into like it's always one of those like trouble spots whenever there are uniforms or people that have to dress the same.
Yep.
And I would have liked it if they just if she'd found a way to just like make them look a little bit more like specific, just about so you always know who our protagonist is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair though, I'm 7 chapters in, I don't think the name of Fred has even been mentioned yet. And the only reason I know it's of Fred is because I know was it cultural osmosis? Like that, and I don't even think in this graphic novel they even mention her name at all.
Don't they?
Sorry, in the first 7 chapters.
I thought it came up in like chapter 2. I'm flipping through this now. Where does the name come up?
Only because it seems so accurate to the book, and the book just does not mention her name. Much.
I know it does mention it later on in the graphic novel, but I don't remember reading it super.
And I would hope it also mentioned it in the book at some point. And I really do like Aunt Lydia's design too. That looks exactly as I would envision somebody who like indoctrinates handmaids with like this.
Oh my god, she's terrifying.
Weird.
She's terrifying. I love it. Yeah, no, the shots when Offred's lying in bed and we get like parts of Aunt Lydia's face, and I'm just like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah. And it's such a great like reaction face from like Offred, like the I'm so tired of everything face. Like I don't know.
Well, but I also like the fact that it's sort of like it's playing in her head, which is very similar to what it is in the novel. And
we spent a lot of time in that woman's head. Like, it's frankly ridiculous just, like, how often you
Oh,
have
and
to check
the-
in with, like, what she's thinking about.
The shot where we see like half of Aunt Lydia's face when she says it's best not to speak unless the wives ask you a direct question. I love any shot where like the face is cut off halfway, but the round glasses where you can't see her eyes so she doesn't look human is just I love it. It's a great touch.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it's just one of those things where, like, distinguish, how much of, we don't want to say her name, or we don't want to, like, show her being individual is part of the intention behind the work, either in Atwood or in Nult's case, or is it just, like, it would be nice to clarify? Oh, yeah, there is a, it's like I was looking for the name, and I did come across the wall.
Yep.
Like, yeah. At this time, for any listeners out there curious, like our most previously recorded episode was 6, so we were just talking about the hung doctors
Yep.
in the bags, and it's
I
like,
have to say, I
yes.
feel like the way the image is described in the book is more terrifying.
Ooh,
The,
yes.
Like,
Please tell me what happened.
well, so they come across the men who are hanging on the wall, and there's like a description of the like blood around the guy's mouth, and it's particularly weird because she specifically describes it as similar to the way a child would draw a smile.
Oh. Yeah, that doesn't look like it's portrayed exactly that way in the in
Yeah.
here. It just kind of looks like blood spatter.
Yeah, it's
a
like
little
there's
bit.
some blood spatter. But yeah, no, she mentions it twice because she spends a long time looking at them. But on one bag there's blood, which has seeped through the white cloth, and where a mouth must have been. It makes another mouth, a small red one, like the mouths painted on with thick brushes by kindergarten children. A child's idea of a smile. This smile of blood is what fixes the attention finally. These are not snowmen after all. Like,
Interesting.
it's chilling. It's very chilling. Wait, Elsie, do you have the book out too?
yeah, of course.
No, you know what? No, that's good. It's good.
I actually do kind of like the panel under that one where we see like the bag with the little blood on it. We
Yeah.
see her.
Her off its eyes, yes.
Yes, and what I like about that panel is just from that angle, it looks like it's kind of like mirroring the color scheme a little bit, where mostly she dresses in all red, as do all the handmaids do, but from that angle, it's still like mostly we see the white and then just a tiny little bit of red in the corner, almost like that could maybe be her someday. Who knows?
Yeah, so I, in general, liked the art quite a bit. I like the just like the line work, the way it uses a more painted approach for the flashbacks, just the design of it all, and again, this is my introduction to this story.
Yeah.
And I was reading a review of the graphic novel just after I finished reading it on the AV Club, and by someone who clearly has read the novel and watched the show, and they made what seemed to me actually like a pretty good point about how them saying actually like the artwork doesn't really work because it makes it far more pretty and sort of like and that doesn't really communicate like the horror of this world.
Yeah.
And after like reading that, I was like, that, I see what they're saying, because this, like a lot of this stuff, like the handmaids look really nice in their like red flowing robes with painted with watercolors. The wallpaper looks like a lot of this world looks really nice. And like Elsie, what you were saying about the people hanging, like that isn't as disturbing as it's described in the novel.
Yeah, and I'll get into this later, but I one of the interesting things is that I think it takes a lot of the images that are like really horrific in the book and plays them down, but there are images in the graphic novel that aren't as horrific in the book that it plays up.
Okay, yeah,
which is really interesting.
There were a few moments to me that that did like that really hit hard in terms of like the violence they're portraying.
Yeah.
But also in general, looking at it, a lot of just like the tone communicated through the artwork is a lot of it is kind of like pretty and dreamlike.
Yeah.
But
And I wonder how much of that is
kind
intentional.
Get that in the book as well, because we get like descriptions of how well manicured the lawns are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be Cambridge, and it's very beautiful, and it's where doctors and lawyers once lived, and it's this wonderful neighborhood that, of course, is being run by this sort of Christian military regime. And I think that's also one of the problems I have with like the TV shows, that it makes everything dark and gritty when like the book is sort of this weird mix where there's a lot of things that are normal, ordinary scenes that are rendered like paranormal and weird, and like another thing where I'm like, oh, why did you cut this out? They're walking 2 by 2 around a football field, and what they've done is put barbed wire on top of the football field fence. Which is such a like interesting image of like, it's like the thing we had to do in PE, walk around the track, but now it's a prison.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, to me, again, just experiencing this for the first time this morning while reading this, that is the most compelling part of the world, about how it is basically our world.
Yeah.
And, like, with the same buildings, the same schools and tracks and towns and stuff like that, but it's just, like, been, with just, like, a slight makeover.
Yeah, they take down all the signs and put up signs that don't have words on them.
Right. And also, Alfred is said on the first page of part 2, shopping.
Oh.
It is the second line. I found it. I've been flipping back and forth through this book for the past 10 minutes, trying to find that name.
Oh,
Thank you for
Yeah.
your service.
I didn't even. Oh my god! I didn't even read the text on. Okay.
I knew it happened early.
But she didn't say that in the book, did she, Elsie?
I don't think she doesn't say that there, because the opening line of chapter 2 is a chair, a table, a lamp. Above a
Did you
ceiling.
just go into your reader's voice real quick for a second?
I had to record the beginning of chapter 2 so we could put it in the podcast. I read it like 3 times. I know what the first lines of the chapter 2 are.
Wait. So that's the first line of chapter 2, a chair, a table, a lamp?
Yeah.
Because in this part 2 it says, the commander's house. My name is Alfred now, and here is where I live. A chair, a table, a lamp. So it just added 2 sentences before the actual beginning. Interesting.
I would think that might be because, like, with a book, it's a little bit easier to communicate a character through, like, so much text. But in a graphic novel, if you're looking at a character, it's probably best to know their name, at the very least, and know who's, like, guiding the story.
Sure.
So I would think that maybe they wanted to include, like, hey, her name is Alfred real quick, in the second part, just to make sure that was, like, communicated.
Yeah, and I mean, just generally in the book is very much like, we just pushed you into the pool, figure out what's happening. Like, I didn't realize until I was talking about it with Max that they never formally say what the handmaids do. It's just, you just figured it out, man.
Yeah. Again, yeah, for those listeners out there, I mean, you know how shocked I was when I found out what blessed be the fruit means, so, yeah.
Oh, Max. my
Especially,
sweet
like,
boy.
the previous, how they just picked the past, like, how it's just inherently, even though, as Patrick pointed out, it is not so different, it's not so dystopian as we might be led to believe in the book, but to see how everything used to look like it's definitely more colorful, it's definitely more...
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
something I love about, I love a good, use of colors in a visual medium, and I love that the past is depicted in these, like, vibrant gold, yellow colors.
And that, like, the line art gets a little weaker so that it's, like...
Yeah,
Oh my god, it really does!
Yeah, and so it feels like less sure, less established, like
Yeah.
it is a memory that they're trying to hold on to, and I like that. There's a great moment much later on, which I will talk about when Max isn't here, where the use of the colors for the past is pretty great. But I do love, there's even like a visual kind of call forward in this section where she's remembering of these little like red leaves as hands reach out trying to hold on to one another, and I just think that is also a fun little bit that will play into a bit into the future of this book.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I like the visuals a lot in terms of these little touches like that, but yeah. Certainly
I
I want to say watercolors. Is that a good way to put it?
It's watercolor.
Yeah. I just went on page. I actually have no idea.
Yeah,
And
page numbers.
the first time we see Luke, whom I guess it's sort of a spoiler because I didn't know who Luke was up until now.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, the one time we see a memory, the panel is just lighter. It doesn't have like it doesn't have a border. It doesn't have a border. It just the memory does not have a border where everything else does. It's like it's immediately striking.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we get other flashbacks that are to the post-Gilead time, where she's finding out that her daughter has been taken away, and those have stark lines, and have stark lines inside the panels.
Mm-hmm. And the color fades to a much colder
Oh yeah.
palette. Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful 2-page spread with like her hair in the background.
Yes.
It's just.
Mm-hmm. It's good. I like it.
Yeah. I love how how Offred's like, I guess not contempt, but irritation is so like is so broad. Like when they're talking about the pregnant woman, her name in the Time Before Time was Janine. The way Janine is just designed, just like inherently looks so like snobby. It's good.
Oh yeah.
She's come to display herself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's also one that has a very distinctive face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In a way many others do not.
Yeah. Yeah. God. Like chapter 7 especially, or like night, like whoa, almost spoiled. Almost went too far. Like, just the fact is, it's probably my favorite chapter because it is so. It's just a flood of all these different kinds of like artistic communications through flashback, through trauma, through all these different
This is the part that I would say uses the comic format most effectively, at least of like the first 3 parts.
Yes.
Just to establish just like these like little snapshots of memories. Mm-hmm. And you can, it really communicates just like, and this is a thing that comics are good at, just of communicating like, someone's thoughts through visuals.
Why couldn't she have done this for the first chapter? There's a really interesting and I think intentional choice with the way the tourists from Japan are drawn. So in the book, it's pretty clear that it's a trade delegation. They're described as wearing suits and high heels, and that's what grabs Offred's attention. She's like, a knee-length skirt, like her legs are so exposed. I haven't seen exposed legs like that in forever. And the fact that they're just like normal people in this adaptation is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's like at some point you feel like sometimes it feels like you're getting so lost inside Offred's head, and then like you see a tourist and it's like, oh, the rest of the world is like fine, like the world isn't destroyed, it's just different and much more terrible now.
Yeah, this was such a surprise for me because again I've been aware of the Handmaid's Tale for a long time, and I had this like notion of what it was about, and I'd always assumed like, oh yeah, it's like a dystopian thing, like, and I assumed that the whole world was this way, and so just this sudden, just like piece of visual information that, oh no, it's just this country, it's just the U.S. Like, Japanese tourists are still Japanese tourists, and they actually like the idea of people from like normally functioning countries just like visiting a dystopia, like that's also something I can't recall seeing that in other dystopian fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was something that stuck out to me when we first read the chapter. Like, it's sometimes when you're reading like dystopian fiction, you always wonder, is the whole world like this? And The Handmaid's Tale is one of the first works I've ever come across to say, no, this is not. It's just this.
An isolated,
Yeah,
It's so
and
jarring.
it's certainly true in our world. There are plenty of people who want to go visit North Korea and places like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes the fact that they want to take pictures of the handmaids like more horrifying. Because when it was a trade delegation, it's like, oh, we want to bring back proof that like the women here are like well treated, so like take a picture of them or something like that.
Interesting.
But here it's just like tourists want to take a picture of these women.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
novel. Yeah.
They do look like, I mean, you know, contrasting with the tourists, they look like costumes almost.
Yeah.
Like, even
Right,
though in this world they're like not, like it's like required.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the style there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the. Oh, they cut that line. That's interesting. In the book, they have Alfred's like, oh, he's the guide is probably explaining to them that for us it's like a penetrative act to be photographed, and that's why we don't want to be photographed. But we just have the flashback instead.
Yeah. And speaking of flashbacks, just real quick, just jumping back over to part 3. Elsie, if I'm not mistaken, that's Luke, that's not in chapter 7. Right? That's a new bit of information. Right? Because the 3 things that happen in chapter 7 are, she talks with a friend because they're like in high school. She goes bird feeding with, I think, her mom or something like that. They're at like a lake or something.
It's she goes to the park with her mother
Yeah, it's
to
not.
a porn burning. I can see why
Right.
they decided to cut that. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, we get in the book. There's a scene where her mother, who's like this radical feminist, takes her to a porn burning where they're burning like all these like porno mags, and she has like this bit where like she must be like 8 years old at the time or something like that, and she's like looking at like this woman who's tied up and like suspended, and she's like, huh, that's weird, and her mother's like, don't look at that, throw it into the fire.
Ah, the 80s.
And I think it would be the 70s, but yeah.
Yeah. And so this new scene with, I'm going to assume Luke, hipster looking dude,
Yeah.
it's totally new information.
I think it's
Is it borrowed from elsewhere in the book?
It's borrowed from elsewhere in the book.
Ah, I see, okay. Right.
We definitely get some other bit in the book where she talks about the hotel rooms.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Interesting. I'm not gonna like ask for like spoilers or anything, but just reading this and seeing it really does make me wonder how we got to Gilead, how this happened. I don't think it's ever gonna be. I have a bad feeling it's not gonna be explained. I don't think it needs to be explained, but like, it piques this kind of art style and this kind of like visual storytelling. It does pique my curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, Alfred explains it the best she can later on, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, she's like just this one woman who like wasn't in government or really
Yeah.
paying that close attention.
I feel like I should wait to like
Yeah.
I have things to say about that, but I'll wait until we get to like
Yep,
the
yep, yep.
spoiler
Yeah, no, I
section.
feel like my time here is up. I should probably get going so you guys can like get into like the rest of the book. And I look forward to listening to this podcast in like 4 months when we're done with the book.
I really hope we can live up to that wait.
Honestly.
I've been waiting months to hear this one episode.
Yeah, no, I mean, same goes for like the show and stuff. I'm sure, like, and like the opera episode. And yeah, I will say it is fun to talk with you, Patrick, and Scott, who have also very little experience with The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah, you're
this
not
is,
alone.
this is your first experience to the entire properties of the graphic novel, which again must be very interesting.
I feel like I'm
Yes.
doing it wrong.
Okay,
Like
good.
no one starts this way.
Yeah, I felt the exact
Well,
same way.
Okay, to be fair, I started with the 1990 movie adaptation because my mother told me I wasn't allowed to read the book.
Okay, that's probably the wrong way.
Yeah.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. Like,
Huh.
there was a bunch of specific images, because I was, like, 13 years old, and I wanted to read the book, and she was like, no. And, like, one of the images was, like, the men on the wall. She was like, that's too much for a 13-year-old to read.
Interesting.
But you can see it?
Huh? No, I was like, well, she didn't tell me that I wasn't allowed to watch the movie.
Oh,
So-
you found a
Constructionist
loophole.
over here, wow.
Yeah.
I thought
You-
she was like, oh, well, you watch the movie, just don't read the book.
No, you forget that I grew up in the internet age. I watched it entirely on YouTube.
Ah, yes. Okay, he's gone. He's gone. Okay, great. Let's get into the juicy stuff.
Yes, please.
Also, hello, future Max.
Yeah,
Yes.
hi, Future Max.
Max, so much has changed since you've been here.
Yeah. I could be dead now when you're listening to this. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that one. But,
Yeah.
Like we're hopefully gonna like have like a pretty good release schedule for this podcast, so we should be done in like less than a year. So
But I just like that for one of the hosts, this is now a time capsule.
that's true.
Anyway, can I jump right into a thing that I wanted to say that's connected to what we were just talking about?
yes.
Now
go
that we can
ahead.
talk about all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk about it all. We can jump right to the end. So the stuff about the like fall of civilization and the rise of Gilead. So this is something that I just always like in any dystopian thing or any sort of like thing set in the future. I'm always fascinated by like, okay, how did things get to there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like and it's the one of these rare moments where my greedy desire for knowledge and lore just kind of like overrides my desire for like a good story, and I'm kind of like, I know we shouldn't just get an exposition dump, but I'd be cool with an exposition dump. I want to know everything. Like, how did this happen? And so I was so happy for just like the little flashbacks we got
And like all the headlines.
Yeah, exactly. Like I really enjoyed that stuff, and because I'm just like, because it is basically just about like our like real civilization turning into this, and so just trying to imagine like, okay, so how would this happen? Especially like how would this like religious thing? Because like and like what are these other wars between different religious factions or like faction like the different like groups within Christianity? Like
Yeah.
I'm very curious about all that.
And I mean, we don't get as much as I would hope, but we still get so much, and it's so good.
Is there more of that in the novel?
No, I think this is roughly comparable to what we get in the novel. I mean, you get some sense of like time passing because I don't think it comes nearly as much all at once as it does here. Because around the time that they're escaping, there's a lot of talks about how like you stop making eye contact with your neighbors because you're worried your neighbors will report you,
Right.
and stuff like that. So we get some form of escalation that we still sort of have here. We have like, and the newspapers were censored and some were closed down. Yeah, like, there's all these people who are like, The Handmaid's Tale is super relevant in the time of Trump. And I'm like, I feel like it was super relevant in 2001 when we faced like a large calamity.
I mean, it's just kind of relevant all the time.
Yes.
It feels that way for sure.
But I'm like, I feel like George Bush was more of a like into Christianity and theocracy than Donald Trump. Just putting that out there, like.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. Like that's one aspect of it, but then I also just think, conversations about just like gender and rights and stuff like
Yes.
that. Like more of that is like happening now. So really, let's just say the 21st century is just a real good fit for this.
Which brings me to the next point of the same chapter we're talking about. Her job in the time before of being a disker is one of the fun things of Margaret Atwood trying to predict the future, where she predicts Kindles, but she's like, oh, of course you have people in the library who like transfer the books to electronic copy. And in the book, it's like they're like, oh, we're gonna throw out the books, and so like Offred would take them home. And it was considered kind of antiquated that she had like paper books.
Oh, that's interesting.
Huh. Oh, so you mean she's like Will Smith in iRobot?
Exactly.
He's into like vinyl and like Converse.
Converse All Stars Vintage 2005.
Exactly. We need some more of that in this book.
Yeah, it's like Also, the way that computers are described in The Handmaid's Tale is like very weird because she's trying to predict what a computer would look like 20 years in the future, and it doesn't completely work. It's like one of my friends described it as it's like reading one of those books where they go to the moon before we went to the moon,
Right.
and so they're going to like the moon caverns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's creatures there.
Yeah, and there's creatures there.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, but thankfully in the graphic novel, I mean, as much as the job of being a disker isn't really a thing that exists, you know, they do have them typing on laptops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is they're transferring them to computer disks, and they're like, we're just not going to show any computer disks.
Right, exactly. What do they do with that in the show?
She's a book editor.
Okay. See, what I kept thinking about is because this is now the second adaptation of this in recent years.
Yeah.
And so I always intended to get around to the show at some point because I've heard good things. But like while I was reading this, I would go to IMDb and be like, okay, so who plays this character in the show? Like, just curious about like, and I'm like, oh, interesting. So what is it? So like Serena Joy and her husband are much younger in the show.
Yes. They are seriously aged down.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not even think to look into that.
Yeah, no, they're like 30-somethings in the show. They're like the same age as Offred.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's
And,
the sexy version, I guess.
I mean, they don't want like a gross, wrinkly old man having forced sex with her.
Well, but I think that the show, they're like, the commander is just like evil. Like, he's just unrepentantly terrible. Whereas in the book, and I think also in the graphic novel, you can kind of understand where he's come to the conclusions he has, but you're like, you're just very wrong.
Right. And I will say, so, can I just talk about the ending?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So again, first time I've ever read any version of this story, and I was surprised by the last like 2 pages, the little kind of epilogue.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And then I went on Wikipedia and looked up the plot summary for the novel, and I was like, oh, okay, same thing happens there. And I was kind of surprised that it did have this, you know, just like kind of positive ending that is just like, okay, humanity did not stay this way. Like this, you know, Gilead was like lasted for a time, but then, you know, that period of time ended, and clearly she was able to like record her story.
And someone did find it eventually. I mean, this is one of the things she talks about. Like, I think
Exactly.
back in part 3, where she's like, I am telling the story. That means that there's an ending. That means that someone will hear it.
Right, exactly. But just, you know, most dystopian stories don't have like a little epilogue that's like, and the dystopia did not last. Things got better. I was a little surprised about that. And really a big thing was like, I wanted more. I wanted the story to continue. I was like, I'm digging this. I'm into it. And now I'm very curious about the show because season 1 is the end of it's just the novel.
Yeah.
Right?
Season 2 is entirely fan fiction.
That's crazy.
So interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so the epilogue is like significantly longer in the book, and it's the bit where Atwood basically turns to the audience and is like, did you see the connection to Iran that I drew? Like, did you see the connections? Like, come on, guys.
Yo, Elsie, how do you feel about the epilogue?
I love the epilogue so much. It's the best part of the book, and none of the adaptations have it.
That sounds like a thing that you would say. I'm not surprised.
Okay, but the creepiest thing is in the audiobook, there's an extended epilogue where when he says any questions, we hear people get up and like ask questions. We hear his answers to the questions, and they reference there being like a little Gilead of like a place where people are reenacting Gilead so that like tour groups and students can go.
And that's only in the audiobook?
It's only in the like extended special edition audiobook.
Did Margaret Atwood write that?
I don't think so, because like it feels different than the rest of it.
But wouldn't they have to say if someone else wrote it? Like give a credit on there, because that would also be fan fiction.
I don't know. I don't think, because someone references iPads and some other things that I'm like, oh, well, but like this wouldn't be how Margaret Atwood would write this. But she
Right.
definitely like gave her approval because she owns the rights to it and stuff. But like,
It does make me also wonder if it's one of those things where, they told her, hey, we're gonna do this audio thing, this like audiobook. Do you wanna, add anything so we can market it as like a special edition?
Yeah.
She'll be like, yeah, here I'll write like a couple paragraphs, spend 10 minutes, make extra money.
Sure.
I don't know
I
if
don't
that's a
know.
thing that she would do.
but yeah, well, we don't get, in the historical notes, why am I forgetting the guy's name? Well, it's not mentioned in the graphic novel, so it doesn't matter. The professor, like, complains that Offred doesn't have enough, like, isn't behaving like a spy, and he's like, oh, what I would do for, like, one piece of paper from the commander's desk. And that she's just describing, like, the day-to-day, events of her life. Also, he makes a vaguely sexist comment at the beginning of his speech. So that we know
yeah?
that sexism isn't dead, just Gilead.
Wait, I'm skipping back to this.
No, not in this version, because in the...
Oh.
So, the historical notes are, like, from the 12th Symposium on Gileadian Studies, so there's, like, a professor who gets up before him and is like, hello, and welcome to this talk. The fishing event tomorrow, there's going to be some inclement weather, so you should wear your galoshes. Something, and then he's like, thank you for that introduction, and he says something about her, like, calling her, like, cold in a way that's like, oh, it's, like, a little sexist.
Yeah. Interesting.
Thank you, I'm sure we all enjoyed the charming Arctic char last night at dinner, and now we're enjoying the equally charming Arctic chair. I use the word enjoy in two distinct senses, precluding, of course, the obsolete third. Like, that's a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also... Yeah, it leaves out the fact that, he arranged the chapters of the book. That, like, the tapes were all jumbled together, so he, like, came up with, like, a plot, basically, and was like, oh, it should go in this order. This makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah. So, Elsie, what do you think of the graphic novel as the expert on The Handmaid's Tale?
Yes.
I like it. I'm a little sad it doesn't, like... It's such a straightforward adaptation that it just truncates things from the novel, as opposed to being like, okay, we're just gonna, like, cut out this part of it and make these artistic choices. I feel like it's a little too straightforward of an adaptation. I mean, it's nice, but, like, I'm like, you didn't take any risks. Because most of the other adaptations, they're like, we're just gonna shuffle everything around. Yeah, both the television show and the movie start with a car chase, as opposed to the scene in the gymnasium.
Really? Is it the chase where she gets caught when they come across the border?
That's my favorite part of this graphic novel.
I really like that. I mean, and especially the way the art style changes.
Yes, because like this is like the part that I've been dying to talk about because I think it's just so well
there's,
done
like, no
artistically.
text.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, please. So, I mean, again, we have like the use of colors, the yellow car, and as the chase continues, the yellow starts to fade and everything starts
Red
to
just
fade
takes
until
over.
red takes
Yeah.
over, and I think that's so good. I also just love, like the line work of everything being very like washed out and watercolored at the start. As soon as like the guards come in, we get some hard edges. The chase continues. The lines become thicker and more jagged until it just like bleeds onto the page pretty much near the end. And I don't know. I love comic artwork is so interesting to me because when you have like text of any kind, especially dialogue in a panel, that tends to dictate how long that panel lasts. And so when you have like a whole car chase scene where there's just silence, everything kind of feels very like, I don't know, it feels very timeless. It feels like it's very dreamlike, and anything could last for as long as the reader wants it to last. And every like image just kind of feels, just very. I just like it. I just like it a lot. It's very good.
Yeah, I mean, it really turns the pacing over to each individual reader.
Yes.
So, like you could see this all, like if this became, a film, you could see this playing all as like slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You could see it all just like going very quickly. Like, yeah, and this is a good action sequence in comic form.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Also, just the falling leaves.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, this is going to be really an obvious reading, but like they're basically like blood, and and when she's there, just like laying with her daughter in the pile of just blood red leaves.
Yeah.
Like this is good imagery.
And I love her trying to protect her daughter, the way that she's sort of like poised over her, but she knows that like there's nowhere left to run.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just the way they do the facial expressions. And it's very similar to the facial expression we get when Nick walks in on her in the living room.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the way that like the end of that sequence where she's reaching out for her daughter and everything just kind of collapses. Again, that was like foreshadowed earlier on in the earlier chapters when she was remembering it, and all we get are like the two hands reaching out over the red leaves, and I just like that the panels themselves kind of fall into the leaves.
Yeah.
Overall, I think that like genuinely this sequence is one of my favorites of this entire graphic novel, just for the way that it uses the medium of comics and visually in so many different ways. I really enjoyed it, and it was very intense and very it just stuck with me.
I totally agree.
But do you think that had they formatted it more similar to the movie and the television show and thrown this at the beginning, it would have worked as well?
Absolutely not. I don't think so.
No.
Because like again, like I focus too much on colors here, but like the fact that the golden yellow colors, the warm tones have already been established throughout the rest of the book as this is like the happy moments from her past that she's remembering. I don't think it would be as powerful if we started with it and seeing those colors fade. I think we needed we needed all these colors, I think, established. And not even just the colors, but again, like the fact that it is the line work changes throughout. I think having that established beforehand and then seeing the transition between the two in this way, I think was very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak for the movie or especially the TV show, because that is something that's spreading the story out over like 10 hours.
Yes.
So just structurally, it's so different from the novel or the graphic novel or like a movie would be. And there, again, not having seen it, I could potentially see it opening with the car chase working, just because the structure is going to be different going forward. Mm-hmm. But just in terms of this on its own, starting with this, I mean, like beginning where you don't really know where you are, you don't know how the world is this way, you don't even know the main character's name yet. And then so much of this is just kind of like these like snapshots of the past and just kind of, like her remembering things, and as we jump around. And so it really like kind of builds and escalates to, this big burst of action where we finally get the moment where everything changed for her. So no, here I can't imagine having that scene happen any earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think different formats, different mediums would adapt it differently, but for this graphic novel, I think it absolutely worked where it is.
And so, coming right after that scene, so does this mean that her daughter has now been married off as like one of the wives?
I think her daughter's too young.
I did too, but I had no sense of how much time had passed. Mm-hmm. Because also, since it's totally black and white, the photograph she's holding, I can't, we don't have the color coding of the clothing.
Right.
Well, I'm trying to see, because, I'm wondering, okay, so she doesn't say it in the graphic novel, because in the bit where, she gets into the bath, she talks about how old her daughter must be in the novel, and she says her daughter must be 8.
Okay, so she's hopefully not been married off.
I think the women who are married are 14.
Okay, so sorry that I have so many questions. But,
No, it's good.
Again, Elsie, you are the expert here. So, I mean, I'm literally just like flipping forward a few pages, but we have this part where we see scenes from like the destroyed cities and bodies being burned and stuff like that. Do we know and the colonies in the book? Do we find out more about the colonies and where these wars are taking place, or like really what the geography of Gilead is, or just like or the former United States is like?
Well, you can kind of tell that it's Cambridge based on a bunch of different factors. There's references to bridges and the river, and it used to be Boston because she refers to her mother living in Boston.
It's like supposed to be like Harvard Square, right? Yeah.
Cambridge. The scene we get as far as the colonies is exactly what I'm talking about, where like the author takes stuff that is like horrific from the book, makes it less horrific, and then stuff that's not horrific in the book and makes it horrific. Because we get like a brief description from Moira that she was shown films of the colonies and they were bad, but we don't get like such a graphic graphic image of like the somewhat rotted flesh on living people that we see as far as the colonies.
Okay. But do we know where the colonies are?
They're somewhere in the Midwest, I think. And because we get stuff that, like, there's, like, a civil war on the East Coast that interrupts their supply lines sometimes, because they're like, oh, oranges from Florida.
Okay.
But nothing that specific. And we get some stuff about, like, I think it's specifically stated that African Americans were relocated to North Dakota, but I can't remember where it says that.
Okay. Again, this is one of those things where I'm just like, I want all the lore.
Yeah.
Just like,
right?
give me like a. Okay, what I want now is Elsie. I'm
Yes.
going to assume you're not familiar with this. Scott, you might be. So remember in the Animatrix. Do you remember this?
I don't actually.
What?
Okay. Elsie, do you know what the Animatrix is?
No. Is it the animated Matrix movies?
Yeah. Yes. So when the Matrix sequels were coming out, they've released this separate like DVD, a collection of 9 anime short films involving the world of the Matrix, and there were these and like all by different cool animators and stuff like that. Some like tied into the main story, and some were just totally standalone things, just in the world. It was actually the best thing in my opinion to come out of the sequels. But they had this 2-part thing called The Second Renaissance Part 1 and 2 that was written by the Wachowskis. That was just like this computer program telling the history of the fall of civilization and how the machines like overthrew mankind, and it just gave you all the lore and all the history of how the world ended up this way. And it was nice. It was in a separate little short film. They didn't have to like do that info dump in a movie. And I'm just like, I just kind of want that, but for The Handmaid's Tale now. Just like I want to know all the stuff about the assassination of the president and like the Constitution being put on hold and like what happened, like with the government. Like, give me all of that. I'm so curious.
Yeah. No. I think it's the bit where she's watching TV, because that's when we get the information about what happened to the Jews, which is they had to convert, or move to Israel, and then some people didn't convert, and were like there'd be film on TV of them getting like removed from their houses and stuff. She also mentions that she thinks that there were a bunch of people who pretended to be Jewish in order to get deported.
Interesting.
But I think in the historical notes we get that like a lot of the Jews who were loaded onto boats were just like dumped into the harbor. Because it was cheaper than actually shipping them.
Right.
Yeah, that's brought up somewhere else, too, like in those films where they were just like, yeah, they don't bother to feed you much or to give you protective clothing or anything. It's cheaper not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are we supposed to feel about Nick?
He's kind of a non-character in my opinion.
Yeah. He is. Yeah, he does just kind of. I don't know. He's there and then not there for like a big chunk of it. It feels.
Yeah, it's just, and this might be just me reading into the artwork, but the presentation of him seems like a potential love interest.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then the part where they sleep together is portrayed like romantically.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, even though it's not, like, what's actually happening. So I was just curious about that. Then it is implied that he does help her,
Yeah.
like, get away at the end. But just in general, you know, he seems like he's right there, drawn like a love interest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's definitely a love interest in the show because they flesh him out a bunch. But in the
He's played by Max Minghella, right?
yes, he's very handsome. But I feel like in the book, it's like she talks to him a lot, and she mentions that she told him her name, which she doesn't even tell the audience.
Oh, interesting.
And
Yeah,
so she
her
does,
name was has been made they made up a name for like the movie and the TV
yes,
show, right?
different names.
Yeah, I just found out that like this morning.
Yeah, well, so the bit in the very beginning where we get the gymnasium, there's a list of names that are said from bed to bed: Alma, Janine, Dolores, Moira, and June. And in the book, all of the names except June pop up. So it was sort of like a fan theory that her name was actually June. And they made her name be June in the TV show. And in the movie, her name is Kate. Don't know where that came from.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, and I think my mother described her relationship with Nick as being like the opposite of her relationship with the commander, in that the commander is constantly talking to her and she's just sort of going along with it, and her relationship with Nick is that she's constantly talking to Nick because she doesn't have anyone else to talk to, and Nick is just sort of listening.
Right. Okay, another question. How much time is supposed to pass
I think
over the
it's
course of the story?
supposed to be about a year, but it's kind of unclear.
Yeah, I really had no sense of how much time
No
it was.
idea. No, I don't know. In my head, while I was reading it, the fact that like all the different sections are called like night and morning or whatever, I was like, is this only a couple days? That doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, looking at it, I got the sense of it being. There are references made to like seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe like a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, so they reference seasons, so I'm like, I guess it's like a little less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it seems kind of like that thing where, like how in 12 Years a Slave, they never give you he doesn't know how much time has passed. He loses all sense of time,
Yeah.
because he just doesn't ever know. And this felt to me like it was going for the same kind of thing where, she is a prisoner, basically. Like, she doesn't, like the days all kind of blur together. And she doesn't really even know, like, how many months or years are passing. So, but I don't know. Again, I have not read the book.
Well, there's only a certain amount of time that she's at each posting, because, like, there's the bit with the doctor being like, hey, you don't have that many chances left.
Right.
And Serena Joy being like, old what's his face didn't work out, huh? So there's some sense of time with that. I think it also has to do with, in the book, her meeting with Nick, she describes what they say and then is like, I don't think we said any of that, actually. This is all just a recreation. And she's continually being like, I don't want to tell this story. So it's her just recounting this period of time, but, like, some of it is made up, clearly, or, like, reconstructed.
Right.
So I think in some senses, like, her story gets truncated in that way, and that, like, the story could have happened over the course of 3 years, but we don't know because she's not telling it with definite timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to the doctor, I think the doctor's another example where things are being portrayed in a scarier way than it is in the book. Like, the way that her body is drawn and, like, she's exposed is like, ooh, none of the other adaptations do it this way. Partly because I didn't realize how scary looking it is that, like, her face is just cut off so the doctor can't see her face.
Yeah, it's weird.
But and it makes her seem more exposed and makes the, like, doctor offering more creepy than it is in the book. I mean, it's still pretty creepy in the book.
I know, but, like, imagining saying that to just this headless body, like, it's real weird.
Oh. Yeah. Ooh, I'll say just kind of like segueing from nowhere. One of, like, my favorite characters to follow, but in the tragic sense, was Janine and her whole story.
Yeah.
Because, like, by the end of it, she is, like, the way that she's drawn is just, like, yeah, it's very
She's like, and she's, like, covered in blood.
Yeah, and she's clearly not there anymore, and everyone's yeah.
I mean, she wasn't very there to begin with.
Yeah,
because she has the bit in the Red Center where she's like,
Also, we haven't talked about the scene of, what's the word? The weird, like, public execution scene.
Ah, yes, the salvaging.
Yeah, but what? Oh, but there's the cool made-up word that they have. What do they call it? The
Particicution.
Yes.
that's right. I read that. I was like, okay, what's about to go down?
Right.
It's the participatory execution time.
Oof.
That's a great word. And yeah, just this thing of, like, okay, everyone kill this person together.
Yeah,
And
holy cow.
Yeah, this is also one of the things that's good about the historical notes, where he, like, discusses the particicution and is like, yeah, they realized they needed to give the handmaid some form of outlet, so tearing a guy limb from limb once a month seemed like a good outcome here.
Yeah, and I mean, the artwork is great here. The way it just goes crazy with the with the red ink, but then on the next page, the same one where Janine shows up, there's just this, like, it's like a really wide shot, but he's the dude that they destroyed is just this, like, puddle on the ground.
Yeah.
Oh, so brutal. Oh. Yeah.
And the fact that we get the secondary thing of, like, he wasn't a rapist, he's this political.
Yeah.
Right. Also, a few pages later, after the scene where the new Ovglen appears.
Ovglen appears, yeah.
And then, but like a page after that, there's just a shot where Alfred is walking by all these flowers, and then we see the flowers just kind of like drawn as like hanging handmaids.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that was while I was reading it, I kind of like stopped at that panel and was like, "Ooh, boy, that
Right.
is
Good use of the medium here.
yes, absolutely."
Yeah. And the full page spread where she's imagining herself hanging in the next chapter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, from with the whole light fixture in the middle.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Finding out, the meaning behind that was really cool.
Yeah. And also the whole revelation about these like clubs where
Oh, Jezebels, yeah.
yeah. That was an interesting like aspect to the mythology.
And I like how it shifts in color scheme. We start getting pinks and yellows and purples that we don't see because those aren't
Right.
the typical colors of women.
Yeah.
And it's a thing where it's like that's like in some ways like preferable to being a handmaid.
Yeah.
I mean, you get to drink.
Moira seems to think so. Moira's like, get yourself sent here.
Yeah. Also interesting that she's just like straight up in a Playboy bunny costume.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the book, it's described as ill-fitting.
But yeah, that whole section, it all of a sudden, it looks like, like a crime movie from the 1940s, and this is some sort
yeah.
of, just like
It's like a seedy bar.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like the Boston Hyatt.
Oh, is that what it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. She says that it had been a
It's like-
hotel.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
hotel, and she's like, I feel like I've been here before, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, just like those were some of my favorite things throughout it. Just the touches of like what this used to be in like our society, and now what it's been turned into. But but
Yeah.
the resemblance is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what's cut out is oh no, they didn't cut that bit. Good. They include the part where Moira was like, "I saw your mother."
Yeah.
In the colonies, and she's
Yeah.
like, "Thank God, I thought she was dead." It's like it's worse though.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this seems real bad. And there's like radiation and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, the images we see of the colonies in like the TV show and stuff, it looks more like a farming prison camp, which is really bad, and we get some like gruesome images of like fingernails coming off and stuff, but it's not nearly as bad as this, where it's like, it's a concentration camp.
Right. Yeah, with just like totally like blasted out buildings and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I even think it's interesting that like the revelation, like when she finds out that her mother's still alive, like there is a bit of relief, but then like very quickly after that, when she's panicking because she thinks that she's been caught or they'll come after her, one of the things she mentions is like they know where her child is. They might get to her, they might get to Luke or her mother or more. So it's like it just adds another person that like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost better if her mother was dead, because then it's one less person to worry about that they could come after at that point.
Right. I think my biggest surprise reading this was that the story ended where it did. Because
Yeah.
in some ways it almost seems like it's kind of just beginning. Like this is just like a new twist in the plot, and like she just
Yeah.
had sex with Nick, and so in an attempt to get pregnant, and like we wonder what'll happen there, and like I could see this just being twice as long.
Yeah, no, and sort of, it's very slice of life. Once the action starts and there's going to be, like, conflict, it's like, no, the book's over.
Yeah.
And then there's an epilogue.
And then there's the epilogue, yeah. Where they're like, we're not sure what happened to her. This is all we have.
Right. Like, this has made me just want to watch the show more because I'm like, ooh, the story continues.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and the this is in the TV show. In season 2, they give Nick a wife.
What?
Who's 14.
Whoa. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going through just like the cast list for the show, and I'm seeing like, wait, like Marissa Tomei shows up in season 2. Bradley Whitford joins the cast. What?
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, he plays a commander.
Yeah, I'm so curious.
His character is so weird. I think of him as being Josh, but like broken by Gilead.
I actually really like that take.
One of the things I don't like about the show is that they create new bodily horror that we don't. The book's already pretty horrific to begin with. You don't need to have like Janine loses an eye in the TV show.
Well, why? How does that happen?
She like makes a snarky comment to an aunt, and so they pluck out her eye.
Oh. Huh.
But this is the age of edgy, violent
Yeah.
dramas.
I'm like, but there's
Gotta have
already
more of that.
edgy, violent content in this. Yeah, and I think also the way that she draws the first kiss between Nick and Offred has a similar, like, romance aspect to it. Like, it looks like something out of a, like, romance anime, because she's wearing, like, the long, white, flowing nightgown. It's, like, very Victorian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's let her hair down.
Yes.
Yeah, and right, the way they have it really does look like, you know, these people who have been kept apart by society for so long
Yeah.
finally, you know, managed to be together. Like, yeah, they look very into it.
When really it's like, it's so good to be touched by someone, to feel so greedy.
Right.
Like, they don't actually care about each other. It's just like, oh, it's like so nice to have physical contact again.
Yeah.
Also, the way they do, what is it? Is it the ritual?
The ceremony.
It's so weird.
Yes.
With the wife there, just
Yes.
it's yeah,
Holding the wrists of the handmaid. Yeah.
extremely uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah. In the book and most of the adaptations, he's sort of standing up, and she describes him as being like his mind is elsewhere. Like, he could just be like thinking about what he was doing at work that day during the ceremony. I love the fact that as she's leaving, she asks the question, like, which is it worse for, her or me? And I'm like, I feel like it's you.
Yeah, but also, I mean, like, I think that really depends on how Serena feels about him. Like, if she really loves him, it's gotta be unpleasant to just sit there.
Yeah. I mean, neither angle is good, but I don't know. I feel like there's one that's
The whole thing
clearly
is
worse.
real bad.
Yeah. Oof.
This book's really a laugh riot, right?
Yeah, what
Oh,
a
man.
fun time.
I'll laugh a minute, for sure.
Elsie, do you enjoy having an entire podcast devoted to this bleak as hell thing?
Well, there are like hope spots. There's fun little bits.
Hey, we got an epilogue that says things turned out
Yes.
okay.
I like that. So when Moira escapes, we get a little diagram, and like Moira has this like small smiley face drawn on her of how she like took apart the toilet, and I think that's just like kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
Yeah, Moira kind of rules.
Yes.
You know what that diagram reminded me very much of, like, old crime comics where they would actually show, like, how to, like, make weapons or set traps and everything.
Yeah.
And, like, comic book critics were like, hey, maybe don't teach kids how to do violence this well.
The good old pre-code comics.
That's right. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the whole point of Moira's character, is that, like, she's a total badass, and then we meet her, and she's like, yeah, I'm just gonna die here.
I mean, she tried pretty hard.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the other example of things that's more horrific is that we get, like, vague descriptions of, like, the pornography that they're forced to watch, the so-called unwomen films.
Oh, yeah, I was curious about those.
And, like, it basically sounds pretty similar to what's drawn here, but it's a lot more visceral seeing it drawn.
Yeah.
Because it's described in pretty vague terms.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, another striking image from this book, I think, is the image of not the feet, but I guess the silhouette of the feet.
Yeah.
Beaten up, and so you don't actually see what they look like, but you see kind of the imagery of them. And
that was the other image that my mother was like, "You're not allowed to read this book."
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. They looked like drowned lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, I think that the fact that we don't actually get to see them is, like, one of the ways in which, like, the really terrible imagery is sort of glossed over in some ways.
I don't know. I kind of like that because we see kind of the silhouette of it, so we kind of get the idea, but the exact detail is left up to the mind of the reader, and I think I like that a little bit because it makes it feel like whatever you are imagining is the worst thing, then that's how it is in your head. Whereas if they specifically drew everything out in full detail, certainly some people would be like, "Who no?" But I think some people would be like, "Oh, that's it. I was imagining a lot worse."
Yeah. It's certainly not torture porny, which I enjoy, because the television show can get a little bit like that, and just But, like, what are you guys' general impressions of the story, having only read the graphic novel?
I liked it a lot.
I did too.
It just like I was saying, I want more. And I mean, like, not that I think it's bad for ending where it is, but I do find this world and this protagonist really compelling.
Well, they are writing a sequel.
Yeah, which I learned about today.
That is exciting.
Wow.
40 years later.
We're at, like, peak Handmaid's Tale right now.
We really are.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to have, like, there's an award-winning TV show and a graphic novel, and finally the long-awaited sequel, all in the same year.
Yeah.
It's a book from 1985.
Hey, look.
But it's making waves.
I know, and it's not like it was even, like, a franchise back then that's getting rebooted. It was just a standalone thing.
It was like a popular book to read in women's studies programs, like.
Yeah, but here we are. Look, anything that any intellectual property that can be, like, milked for more money will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite IP? Oh, The Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, it's like the hot franchise all the kids love. I mean, people do cosplay as it at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
And it's become like a political thing to cosplay as it.
Yeah. So I get it. I'm also very curious what the story. I mean, what the story of the sequel is going to be like. And plus, it'll now be like the weird sort of Game of Thrones thing, where you'll have, like, books and adaptation, like, going in different directions.
No, I mean, I loved this. This is, like I said, also similarly first time jumping into this story, and I was, like, captivated from beginning to end, trying to figure out what's going on, what's gonna happen. I mean, yeah, I think it's great, and I would love to. It makes me want to consume more media of it, like the books and the TV show. And
yes,
yeah, I'm excited.
I know. I would say it's successful. It might be an adaptation, but look, it worked for me as my introduction, and it worked as, like, a standalone thing.
Well, that's good, because I was like, this is truncated and takes out all of the things I love about the book, but this, same time, like, keeps the broad strokes that I like. Because it's one of the problems with, like, other adaptations. They just, like, her mother is cut out of most adaptations, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, she's barely in this one.
Yeah. Which I think partly has to do with, I think this one makes a concerted effort to get rid of the things that date the novel, and her mother makes the novel feel a little dated, because her mother is clearly a second wave feminist.
Right.
And like the porn burning, like that's a very second wave,
Yeah.
1970s, early 80s type thing.
Yeah, because this is like originally as written, this is supposed to be set in like 2005, right?
I don't think we get anything as specific as that, but like pretty much.
Yeah, I mean like not that specific year, but like that sort of, but like 20 years in the future.
Yeah, and like there's all this stuff about how Offred didn't really care about feminism and stuff, which is very like 1980s. We're in between second and third wave feminism, that sort of thing. And so if you cut out her mother, then you don't have to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I will say after this, I might read the novel at some point. I am definitely going to try to get to the TV show sooner. Yeah.
Well, you could read the novel along with our podcast.
I could.
Oh.
Yeah, one chapter a week, get caught
Yeah,
up.
the chapters are like 3 pages long.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's very simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's not a big ask.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah, no, like, just read a couple pages and then listen to my podcast. And then it's a 2019 thing and you don't have to actually read a book.
Yeah. And plus, and then I'll also rate, review, and subscribe.
Exactly.
Like any good listener.
I will absolutely listen to your podcast as long as you didn't have that little dummy from NerdSync named Scott on an episode. Hate that guy.
Well, luckily I had him on for a special episode. Doesn't ruin your experience of the general podcast if you don't listen to the episode that Scott was on.
Okay, good.
Because, I mean, it's not about the book anyway.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I only will listen to book-related episodes.
You're not excited for the opera episode that may or may not be happening?
No. Not going to listen to it. Book only. I'm a purist. Says the guy who's only read the graphic novel.
Yes. On that note, this concludes the episode. You can find me on Twitter at the Muse Sappho and on YouTube as Sappho of Lesbos. Also my Instagram at the Muse Sappho. I do vintage clothing stuff. It's fun. Gentlemen, if you want to plug yourselves.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on the YouTube channel NerdSync. I use comics and superheroes to teach about real-world history, science, philosophy, culture, and art. So if that is something that you are interested in, that is NERDSYNC. It's very fun. Having a lot of fun doing it. Got some good stuff coming up. But thank you so much for inviting me onto this podcast. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, and you can watch the work that I create at the YouTube channel Patrick H. Willems, which is mostly video essays about movies. It's not as focused and simple to explain as
I describe it as videos about comic books, videos about movies, and videos about comic book movies.
I mean, those are relevant, yeah, and I mean yeah, sure. You know what? That's better than anything I can think of right now. Also, Elsie appears in a handful of them, so.
And I helped make some of them, so
It's
you know,
true.
support his channel.
Yeah, and then so go watch those, and then you follow me on all the social medias at Patrick H. Willems.
All right, praise be.